The government's decision to backflip on a mandatory social worker registration scheme is absolutely baffling. This is in light of the fact that the government's already committed $4.7 million and there's been 5 years worth of work going towards this registration scheme. This scheme's come out of a coronial inquest recommendation following the really tragic passing of Chloe Valentine. So we've got Belinda, who's Chloe's grandmother, here with us today, talking about that lived experience and just how difficult this decision from the government is, to hear that they're now walking away from a safeguarding mechanism that would have helped to keep vulnerable South Australian children safer. We know that the child protection system is in crisis. That's no secret. This is an opportunity to make sure that added protections and safeguards are put in place. We know that ultimately, when these safeguards are not adequate, that it's vulnerable South Australian children that slip through the cracks, and they are the ones that pay the ultimate price. We think that is utterly unacceptable and more needs to be done on this front. Social workers are incredibly important. They do invaluable work in our community, but ultimately they are dealing with vulnerable South Australian families and particularly vulnerable children. And so ultimately, when members of the public are engaging with social workers, they should know, and it's important for them to know, that they're engaging someone who is registered, who is qualified, and that there are standards that are consistent across the board when they are engaging with these professionals. Now, I've been chatting with stakeholders and social workers, and I've been told that they felt absolutely blindsided by the government's announcement last Friday and are gobsmacked by the fact that they are now walking away from a mandatory social worker registration scheme. The government knew when they supported this legislative reform back in 2021 that a national model was going to be incredibly difficult to achieve. They knew that there was, and they talked about the fact that was over 2 decades worth of advocacy in attempting to achieve a national model. Despite this, the government is now walking away from a state-based model that they said themselves would be the next best thing, and that they would be paving the way in South Australia to what could be a national model in the future. I'm just not buying why the government is walking away from this scheme, and we are urgently urging the government to reconsider their decision to cancel this mandatory social worker registration scheme. The Liberal government at the time supported these legislative reforms, and it was an election commitment of the Liberal government to have a social worker registration scheme. This is something that we continue to support, and we urge the government to reconsider their decision to cancel and scrap this mandatory social worker registration scheme.
Laura, the peak body for domestic violence and sexual violence workers say that many social workers would leave the system if this came in. How would a Liberal government manage that, or what options are there to bring this in and address the cost of living issues?
I'm hearing from social workers that they are wanting to have additional protections and that they're wanting to ensure that they've got the professionalisation that comes with a registration scheme. Ultimately, social workers are dealing with the state's most vulnerable in our community, and so what a scheme like this ensures is that when a member of the public is engaging with a social worker, that they know that they're engaging with someone that is qualified, registered, and that there is a minimum standard across the board that will be applied. They're the ones that are designing this model, so that's something that they can take into consideration. Are they now going to be reconsidering fees for registrations for nurses, doctors, teachers, who we are also struggling to see enter the profession? So ultimately, at the end of the day, this isn't passing the pub test, and the government needs to come forward as to why they're really scrapping a mechanism and support system that would have protected South Australian children.